Finally, it is here. A full VR game that lasts longer than 3 hours. Hi, I'm Tom, and this is Fallout 4 VR. I can't tell you how happy I am to finally be playing a VR title where there's no constant dread that the game might enter the next cutscene. And although it is a game where I've already put a lot of hours into the regular version of, I still had an amazing time playing the VR version of it. Mostly because the regular version was already great fun and filled to the brim with content. However, during this review I will focus more on the VR aspect, seeing that the original game is already out for 2 years now. As for the rest of the standard scoring points like handling of the controls, graphics and sound design, I will tell you all about it right now. Let's dive in. Let's start with the one thing I'm most excited about, the amount of content that is in this game. And I cannot stress this enough because the number of times I was excited to play a new VR title and laid down my PayPal account to bear the cost, only to be let down by the rolling credits 2 hours later, that number is too damn high. If you've played the regular version of Fallout 4, you know exactly what to expect. A large open world brimming with side quests, hidden locations, sidekicks and settlements, all of which you can explore at your own pace. Fallout does a way better job at that than say Assassin's Creed, where you might have 3 extra side quests to complete. Oh how nice. While Fallout has 15 at a time, you're welcome. Oh, you completed 1? Well, here are 5 more, just because you didn't say thank you. Aside from the boatload of quests, there is of course the actual gameplay, and for a game that was not originally designed for VR, or maybe it was, guess we'll never know, it does work wonderfully well. It felt like the weapons were a little bit more forgiving damage wise compared to the original version, but I think that was done because you now have to manually aim all your weapons and are bound to miss some shots, which in turn made the combat feel more realistic and enjoyable. Your level still has influence over your strength against tougher opponents though, in order to keep you from feeling completely overpowered and tipping the skills completely in your favor. I mean, with a nuke launcher, how can you not become completely overpowered? As for performance and VR settings, this is a little bit of a grey area for me. First off, because the minimum system requirements are a lot higher here than for standard VR. A GTX 1070 is required as minimum instead of the older GTX 970. I think this can be a big issue and can withhold a lot of people from buying such an enjoyable VR game. However, I also assume that if you have the money for a Vive, it is also probable that you have the money for a high-end GPU. I played it with the GTX 1080 myself, and rarely if ever did I have issues with the frame rate. Aside from the hardware, the game does offer some settings to make your experience easier in VR, like left-handed support for people like me and a button that makes you turn in case you don't have a lot of motion space in your play area. Not to forget, you can choose between constant movement and teleportation, which I love for the sole reason that I think teleportation is cheesing the system just a little bit. Even though I find this to be a pretty good port from the regular version of Fallout 4, I can't deny that the Pip-Boy is a little bit clunky at times. You use the trackpad on the Vive controllers in order to navigate the menus, but all too often do you skip over the thing you want to use or equip, and seeing that you have to use healing from this thing during combat, it can sometimes cost you your life in the progress. Also, because for some reason it no longer pauses the game while you use it, like in the non-VR version, it forces you to take things slower, but also screws you over at times. The funny thing is though that my biggest gripe with Fallout 4 VR is not even with the game, it's with myself. After prolonged play sessions of longer than 3 hours, my legs started to give in and forced me to sit down while playing, which is also the reason why some of the gameplay you've been seeing is from waist high. To continue playing without any muscle cramps, I had to use my desk chair to sit while running and shooting about, and that does limit you a little bit in the way of continuous playing for hours at a time. Not to mention the immersion breaking it does, because when the characters are having a serious conversation, you just sit there like a little midget. Lastly, I would like to discuss the entire $60 for the same game argument. Yes, it sucks that if you've already bought the regular version of Fallout 4, you need to do it again for the same game. However, I think that it is justified here. Bethesda needs to assign resources and game devs to make these type of projects, and they won't just do it for the shits and giggles, if there was not a bug to make. You need to realize that it takes millions to make these type of games, and they won't hand it to you for free. So to reiterate, yes, it sucks, but deal with it. I don't think it will come as a shocker when I say that I loved this game. I loved the original Fallout 4, and this is just a really amazing VR version of it. In the case of Doom, it was also amazing, but that was cut down into 2 hours of gameplay time for $30, which was unacceptable. However, with Fallout VR, I can surely say that I can spend 60 hours in it, which already makes it the highest value VR game to date. I highly encourage other developers to do the same with their older games, and if not, that Fallout has at least shown us that the VR platform is still a place where you can literally get in the middle of it and have an amazing time while doing so, as long as there's enough to do in the world around you. Some aspects are a little underdeveloped, and the fact that you have to pay $60 again is not something I like to do. But when you get a highly enjoyable, highly immersive product back, I will gladly pay up. So with that said, I will not doubt to say that Fallout VR is worth the money.